start with the Geeta Dhyan. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters of the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us, O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Good morning. We're coming to the close of this, what here is translated as ending action in knowledge, this yoga of knowledge attained through action in right spirit. So we had just read this yesterday. We'll take the commentary. We'll spend the morning with Swami Chinmayananda again. He who has, this is 41, Sutra. Just look at 41. Mm-hmm. He who has renounced actions by yoga, whose doubts are rent asunder by knowledge, who is self-possessed, actions do not bind him. And then lovingly, Krishna says, O Dhananjaya. So commentary is here. This being the penultimate verse in the chapter. So it's the lead-in to the ultimate verse, to the last verse of the chapter. It is a beautiful summary of all the main secrets of life explained at length in the chapter. So we're coming to the summary of the entire chapter. So if you want to hear again, she who has renounced actions by yoga. What yoga are we speaking of here?
Yoga.
Specifically, it's karma yoga, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh. He who has renounced actions by yoga. So what does that mean? He who has renounced actions by yoga.
The fruits.
Very good. Very good, engineer. Yeah. So by acting, but acting in the proper spirit, beneficial spirit, selfless spirit, we can say. And then not being desirous of the fruit. Whose doubts are rent asunder by knowledge. Capital K, knowledge. So highest knowledge, speaking of the self, that light which is radiating within. Who is self-possessed, meaning
big
Self-control.
in control of oneself. Actions do not bind him. Okay. So it is a beautiful summary of all the main secrets of life explained at length in this chapter. When, through the practice of karma yoga, we have learned to renounce our attachments to the fruits of action and yet work on in perfect detachment, when every doubt in us regarding the goal of life has been completely removed and our own inner experiences of the nobler and the diviner in us, the more divine in us, yes. As a result of the above two, the ego comes to rediscover itself to be nothing other than the Atman, than the soul. Then the individual ego comes to live poised in the self as the self. When such individual works, his actions can never bind him. It is only egoistic activities motivated by our egocentric desires that leave gross impressions on our inner personality and thus painfully bind us to reap their reactions. With a sense of detachment and in right knowledge, as indicated in the above scheme might have some nefarious connotation, but scheme just means the approach, the step by step. When an individual has completely destroyed his ego sense, his actions cannot bind him at all.
Not so sad.
As a dreamer, I might commit a murder in my dream. Hey, hang on, come back to the ego sense. So what is the ego sense?
I'm the small I.
Sense. How does it feel? What does it feel like? How is it asserting within?
Is desire.
It's very personal.
Like grasping, like holding on to, demanding, being safe, whatever.
Or letting go.
It's really the center of all of the emotions, isn't it?
Yes.
Sorry, dear? You said?
I think that I'm the body, and then these emotions come.
Yeah. And even deeper than I think that I'm the body, I feel that I'm the body. Right? So yeah, it is, but it's even ingrained that way, as if in the heart. Very, very deep, and right?
As if it is knowledge.
As if it is knowledge.
Which is that I amness, the primordial I am is married with the body.
So I am itself is pure. I am itself is pure. But if you watch what's happening in the inner world, I am is always accompanied by some object.
Oh.
I am this, I am that. I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm needful, I'm hungry, right? So ego sense that helps us to touch this ego sense. Practically speaking, we want to be in touch with the ego sense, but not following that. We want to be in touch with it. We want to be aware of how it asserts within us. This is part of our self-reflection and inner work, right? That will help us break free of it. If you can catch it, if you can be aware of it, if you can feel how it asserts, if you can see how it asserts. No surgeon could ever find an ego, and the psychiatrist can't really find it either. You'll have to find it. And then, in finding it, you can be free of it. Right? You can convert it, you can lift it up to the light, but so that ego sense, we'll have these spiritual arguments. It's very funny stuff. We'll have these spiritual arguments. Somebody will say, kill the ego, and 27 people will say, what do you mean kill the ego? That's not what it means. Yes, that's what it means. Because ego doesn't have any reality. It's just a false notion. So if you kill it, that's actually bringing yourself to life. It's just ignorance. So it's not killing the thing.
It's sacrificing, really. By killing it, you sacrifice.
If you want to learn the piano, and now you don't know the piano, now you don't know how to play the piano, and you learn to play the piano, isn't Ignorance of how to play the piano, dying along the way.
Yes.
So it's the same. There's no need to defend the ignorance. It's fine.
It is.
It's just ignorance.
So true. Recognize. Oh.
It doesn't exist as anything other than ignorance. It's just it feels that it does. It seems that it does. But in the light, it doesn't. We can say, I didn't know, and now I know. What did the Buddha say after his 7 years? He was walking along the road. Someone said, oh my God, you glow. Are you a god? Are you a king? Or what are you? And he says, awake.
Perfect.
Which described it perfectly.
Yes.
Right? The ignorance was gone. Oh, it's just that. It's just that. I didn't know, now I know. So, and in so doing, the ego is destroyed. As a dreamer, I might commit a murder in my dream of my dream wife. But when I awake from my dream, shall I be punished for the crime?
No,
it's a dream.
Thank you.
Have dreams like
but you
that.
still made the choice in the dream, right?
Imagine.
Who made the choice?
The intellect.
Dream.
The dream character made the choice.
Can't carry that.
For the dreamer has also ended along with the dream.
But I mean, it's
The dreamer only existed in the dream. Who made the choice? The dreamer made the choice.
But if you have a purified intellect, even in the dreams, it wouldn't make those choices, right?
The intellect is made of dream stuff. It's mystical. It's mysterious. The reality of the intellect is absolutely pure. The underlying reality of the intellect is absolutely pure.
Like its architecture?
The underlying reality of the intellect is the light alone. Only the light. The intellect chooses to die. The intellect realizes its unreality.
Yeah, just a logical choice.
The intellect realizes its inferiority.
But it's still accrued karma.
Limitations.
Well, it doesn't cease to function just because it quote unquote dies. There's
It doesn't cease to
a
function.
mechanism at that point.
Yeah, but it becomes a pure instrument of the light. No longer making individual choices.
Right.
One choice. One choice. And then becomes an instrument. No other choices to make. Once the intellect is guided by the intuition, it has no further choices to make. The intuition is the life.
Yeah.
The intuition is the life. The intuition is the wisdom. The intuition is the guide. The intellect goes through a process to realize that.
Yes.
And then it surrenders itself to the intuition, to the light. It says, I don't wish to be alone. As a dreamer, I might commit a murder in my dream of my dream wife, but when I awake from my dream, I shall not be punished for the crime that I seem to have committed in my dream. For the dreamer has also ended along with the dream. The dreamer committed the murder and deserves punishment, but in the waker, the dreamer is absent. And the one who's awake, the dreamer, is what?
The one who's awake. The awake and the dreamer.
Similarly, the egocentric actions can bind and throttle only the ego. But when the ego has become atmavantaha, that is, poised in the self, just like a dreamer when he gets poised in the waker, activities of the ego can no longer bind the self, capital S self. The ego poised in the self is the experience of the real self. The dreamer poised in the waker is the waker. So one more here. This being the wondrous result in the supreme profit that true knowledge can give to the deluded, Krishna advises Arjuna. This is the last sloka of the fourth. Therefore, with the sword of knowledge, cut asunder the doubt of the self born of ignorance, residing in your heart, and take refuge in yoga. Arise, O Bharata. And Swamiji says in this concluding stanza, the Lord's advice is precise and it is given with a loving insistence. The stanza rings with a spirit of paternal urgency felt by the Lord towards the Pandava prince. In the language of war, Krishna advises his warrior friend on the battlefield how best to live the life of dedication and perfection, as advised by the Hindu rishis from the quiet and peaceful Himalayan valleys. With the sword of knowledge, Arjuna is encouraged to cut off the bonds of ignorance that cleave asunder this doubt of the self lying in the heart. The spiritual doubt is explained here as working from the heart. This may read rather strange to a modern person. Doubt must come from the intellect. It cannot come from the heart. It is the traditional belief in Vedanta that the intellect is seated in the heart, wherein the term heart does not mean the fleshly pumping instrument in the human bosom. The term heart is used here not in its physiological meaning, but in its literal usage, where the heart means the source of all love and sympathy of all noble human emotions. An intellect functioning from and through an atmosphere of sympathetic love, kindly charity, and other such noble qualities alone can be considered in the science of philosophy as the human reason. Therefore, when the Upanishads talk of the doubts lying crystallized in the heart, the rishis mean the intellectual perversions in some of the seekers that make them incompetent to feel and appreciate the vision of the soul. These doubts can be annihilated only when the individual gains an intimate, subjective experience of the self in him. This can be achieved only by yoga, not a strange mystical process secretly advised to a few by mysteriously rare groups of gurus to be practiced in the unknown caves of the Himalayas, living together a frightful life of unnatural privations. In the Gita, the word yoga has been forever tamed and domesticated to be with all of us, serving us faithfully at all times in our life. By the term yoga, in this last stanza, Krishna means the 12 techniques which he has explained as the subjective jnanas. The chapter concludes with a spirited call to Arjuna, arise, O Bharata. In the context of the Gita, though the word may be rightly said to mean only a call to Arjuna, it is a call to every seeker, especially to this country as a whole, to get up and act well in the spirit of yajna, this sacrificial spirit, and thereby to gain more and more inner purity, so that through true meditation, every one of us can come to experience and gain the supreme peace, which is the final fulfillment of evolution. What is the purpose of the intellect?
To decide.
To discern.
Yes.
Between what and what?
Unreal.
The real and the unreal.
Yeah.
That's the highest, isn't it? Once it is done so, what's its purpose?
To serve.
Supports.
To serve the light, to serve the real.
Yes.
Something else?
No.
No.
Pass the intellect.
Oh. So that's where it goes. Does the light have the responsibility for the actions of the shadow?
No.
No.
The shadow has the responsibility for the actions of the shadow.
Yes.
But the light's responsibility is just to shine, isn't it?
Yeah. We tap in. Be.
So when one discovers through this process of this life of yoga, when one discovers oneself to be the light and abides in the light, one's responsibility is only to
The Lord.
shine.
Yes.
So does the light know how to shine on its own? Does someone need to help it? Right? So it's a getting out of the way, as it were. Oh. Questions, comments?
After the chapter of the cosmic vision, Arjuna
Yes.
has questions about, well, you talk about meditation and knowledge and practice, and which one's the best, which one's the highest?
Yes.
And Krishna says that better than practice is knowledge, and better than knowledge is meditation, and better than meditation is renouncing the fruits of your actions.
Yes.
Just do that.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
that's the
Yes.
truth.
Yeah. And by the way, in the 5th chapter, it starts with Arjuna asking a question because he's not clear.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The next chapter is true renunciation, chapter of true renunciation. So it's a deeper dive into renunciation. Swamiji says this chapter opens with a doubt raised by Arjuna. He says it's almost similar to, but not the same as the one he raised in the beginning of the 3rd chapter. At the end of Krishna's discourses in chapter 2, the disturbed mind of Arjuna could not definitely come to a decision whether action had any place at all in the life of spiritual seeking. Here in this chapter, he asks only which of the two, renunciation of action or participation in action, is the nobler and the greater. So that's where we'll start or pick up, is from there. Those last two shlokas that we covered this morning in the 4th are again pointing to if you will, and Swamiji has his own beautiful approach on the commentary, which will raise questions as well as allay some of them. But what Lord is doing in these last two is summarizing the teachings of yoga that have been covered to this point, which is to everything in the spirit of yajna and everything in the spirit of sacrifice. And remembering what sacrifice is. So sacrifice is
Sacred.
to make sacred. Beautiful. So make every action, every thought, every word, every action sacred. That's the guidance.
Right.
So get the little I out of the way. Everything that we do in every moment, everything that we think, everything that we say, everything that we do, uplift it And here the techniques have been given us, so it's a reminder. And then, again, he says, and in so doing, and in applying this yoga, then the self comes to abide in the self. Then you come to the light, and you live in the light. And you recognize that that shadow character who you took yourself to be is not who you are.
Right.
And so what to do about all the things that the shadow character did?
Let him be.
Let it be.
Stay in the light.
Yeah.
You just have to stay in the light.
Yeah.
That's the requirement, isn't it? Just to stay in the light. What can you do?
Because you'll retrace all that karma, which will be down, and you'll be able to light into it.
Right?
Be in the light.
So that's because the light didn't do it. The shadow character did. And I'm not the shadow character. That shadow character is dead now.
He collected karma.
Right? So now there's only the light. And what I thought to be is now an instrument of the light. Oh, so that's where we are. Okay, any other questions or comments, dear? No?
And in the light, there's no karma getting stuck on you. Not that
Karma always applies to the object, to the experience, to the things, which you are not.
Exactly. Some of these things.
So, having said that, be good, do good, be kind, be compassionate, adapt, adjust, accommodate, bear insult, bear injury. Having said that, so speaking once again to the shadow character, who's in the process of coming into the light.
Yeah. Must have, for sure.
Oh. Anyone else? Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. 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 May all be free and happy. Okay, let's close with final prayers and RT. Page 174. I remember a dream. It was a dream where in the dream, as the dream character, I was trying to find the edge of the dream because I knew it wasn't real. I was trying to pull away that edge because I knew that wasn't real. That's what's to be done.
New set of eyes.
A
new set of eyes.
A new set of eyes. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mrichor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mrichor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Orvai Rukmeva Bandhanan Mrichor Mukshiyamam Mritata Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashanto Makashi Dukhabhat Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mritor Ma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudashate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humble Satguru Shivananda Maharaj, and for all the saints and sages of all traditions. Okay, let's rise for our